Hello and welcome to the Metapod Podcast, the Pokemon podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. My name is Jake, and that is Sean. Sean, it's been a week. How has it been for you?
It's been good. It's been good. It was eventful. Yesterday was very eventful for myself and for the YouTube channel. Did a 9.5 hour stream, Jake.
Yeah.
Boy, howdy.
So I would love to talk about how your League Cup took 9.5 hours.
So yeah, I mean, we could just get right into it. The League Cup was. We had a lot of really impressive players show up. We had several regionals winners in the juniors and seniors categories come. We had Henry Chow, who got top 8 at NAIC, was there. I think Nicholas Moffitt, is that his name?
Mm-hmm.
He was also
Nicholas
there.
Moffitt is a player, yeah.
Yep, he was also there competing. So people who do really well at large events. So we had enough players where there was an entire juniors tournament, an entire seniors tournament with top cut, and then an entire masters tournament with top 8 top cut. And top
Did you
16
stream
points.
all of it?
I did not stream like the juniors and seniors. I didn't stream most of it. I only streamed the finals match between the seniors.
I didn't know that you streamed the finals match.
Yeah, because that was a really amazing match. It was Dragapult versus oh boy, I'm losing it. Dragapult versus Gardevoir, maybe? I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was a really, really good match. Definitely go watch the VOD. And the two players that are in the match are both competing at Worlds this year. I think they're both either previous regional winners or like very, very high placing regionals performance. So like very high level of skill at the tournament. And the reason it went so long is because we had 6 rounds of Swiss for the Masters and then a top 8 cut. So at least 3 rounds. Well, not at least 3 rounds of best of 3. So in total, it was a 9-round tournament. So
that's
kind of a mini regional.
A League Cup should not take that long. I'm sorry. It should not take that long.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how many players. We must have had over 40, maybe 50 players or more in the Cup for the Masters.
That's a good amount of players, though, I will say.
And then in total, we must have had like 60 to 70 players total between Masters, Juniors, and Seniors. So it was full. It was rocking. I don't think there was that much of a delay. I think the challenge is when you get to Top Cut, there was a decent amount of Lost Box and Gardevoir. And in Top Cut, you get best of 3, 75 minutes. So, and when you get to, 1, 2, like last turns, those turns can take as long as they take. And with some of these decks, each turn is 5 or 10 minutes. So you end up having an hour and 45-minute best of 3 round. And if you do that a couple of rounds.
That's why, like, I've enjoyed One Piece a little bit in that aspect in terms of overtime. I mean, people really struggle to follow it. But in One Piece, it is 3 turns or 5 minutes, whichever one happens first. I don't know if it's the same way in Digimon.
I think it might have been. Yeah, you get a certain amount of time. So you're given like a window of time and you either do the turns or you do the time. And also, because there's a lot less deck searching, I would imagine the same as in One Piece.
Yeah.
There's less. In some ways, there are far less game actions that you can take that require you to shuffle and reshuffle and search and whatever.
Yeah, like I would say that there's well, I don't want to say that there's limited lines in One Piece compared to Pokemon, because like in One Piece you have like 6 different cards that can do attacks, can swing in a single turn, whereas Pokemon you just have one. But like you have the cards in your hand, and that's pretty much what you have to work with. Not Pokemon where like, oh, I can just play research and I can get a whole new hand and then I can do whatever I want with that. There's only like, I think the highest I've seen in One Piece is like draw 3, and that's draw 3 and trash 2. So they're very much different, but I kind of wish Pokemon would adopt in overtime a similar rule where it is turns or time. Now, I don't know what time it should be, whether it's like 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. But I think Pokemon should adopt that rule. I think it's a small step that could go a little far in
I
that
mean,
aspect.
they could adopt the rule. I think if they adopted the rule, though, they would have to fundamentally change the base rule set of the game. Only because,
Really?
yes, because, like I said, One Piece naturally, and this is not a knock on One Piece or anything, but One Piece has fewer game actions that you can take per turn.
Oh, yeah,
And
especially in the early game.
right. So in Pokemon, the number of game actions you can take is dictated by all the cards in your hand plus all the cards in your deck. You draw a ton, you search a ton, and the rules give you a specified amount of time that you can take doing those game actions and between game actions to think.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what, some players like Tord and others have gotten into trouble for, is maybe they take too much time. It's considered slow play. So that is something to keep in mind, but it's a really fine line because, if you're piloting a Lost Box deck or if you're piloting a Gardevoir deck and you give both players a total of 5 minutes, right? And you say, okay, you have 3 turns or 5 minutes. Well, if the player gets the turn and they're taking game actions and those game actions progress the board state, but they happen to take all 5 minutes and that player happens to be ahead, then they just win by a factor of simply having a complicated deck.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
That I think that's why I'm like, they could change it, but I do think they'd have to either fundamentally change rules about slow play, which is kind of a hard thing to do in Pokemon. But I
don't really think you can change the rules on that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a totally valid criticism, though, right? I think that's the reason, to be honest, that's the reason Pokemon probably introduced 3 prizers in the first place, is they were like, guys, this game, when it's all single prizers, takes way too long. Can we stop?
It takes forever.
What if everybody could win in 2 turns? Huh?
We either want spread or winning in 2 turns.
Right. So I
take
think
all your prizes at the same time.
But yeah, that's why tournaments like that can, really drag out, is if the best decks in format happen to be single prize decks that have a lot of intricate little knobs and buttons that you can push. Yeah, it's just it can be a little excruciating. We definitely were like waiting on a table at one point in the top 4, and we were like, no diss to the players. It was just one of the decks. The deck that won was Chen Pao. Surprisingly. So Chen Pao was able to beat Gardevoir 2 games in a row, top 4 and in the finals. And I didn't realize how absolutely oppressive Chen Pao can be to Gardevoir. It was, I personally, I never really thought about the matchup, but
the Radiant Greninja, right?
Radiant Greninja, the fact that Gardevoir, at least in this tournament, all the Gardevoirs that made top cut did not play Rare Candy. So if you don't get TM Evolution, you are taking 3 turns to get into a Gardevoir EX. There's no way around it, right? So that gives Chen Pao players ample time to find Canceling Cologne, to find Prime Catcher or Boss, to set up so that they can just snipe 2 of those Kirlia. And that is how, 4 out of the 5 total games in those sets went. Was Chen Pao was just constantly telling the Gardevoir player, hey, I'm just not going to let you play the game. And it felt just wild to watch. I'll just say that. It was just absolutely brutal to watch, thinking like if you're the Gardevoir player, like even if you start Klefki or Fluttermane, like it didn't matter. It didn't matter, Jake.
We'll talk about some of the differences because I've also noticed Gardevoir decks kind of cutting rare candies in a sense in favor of Team Evolution. We'll talk about more decks and like Worlds decks potentially in the near future, especially if you're in the Discord, if you're in the official Metapod Discord. We have posed kind of a question. We're going to start getting more into the questions in terms of that you guys provide. And if you guys want to provide questions, either leave like YouTube comments or go in the Discord and jump in the thread that Sean has made. He'll label like the next episode, stuff like that, and you can leave your comments in there. I see within 1 hour of posting it, Sean, we already have a couple questions in
nice.
there.
I didn't even know that.
For the next episode. Yeah, I just looked because I was like, I want to make sure that I say this the right way. trying to get people in there. Link to the official Discord will be in the description below. I won't speak too much on it, Sean, but I learned another card game actually over the week.
Oh,
Fun
okay.
fact. By accident, really.
Okay. Is it sorcery?
I learned I guess kind of not well, the game name is not sorcery.
Oh,
It's
okay.
called Shadowverse.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever heard of Shadowverse?
I've heard of it. I don't really know much about it.
It's an interesting game. I went to like a sealed event for One Piece. They have this like new sealed event. And I showed up real early, so I was just waiting there. And then so I started watching some of the other card games that they had, because they had like Shadowverse and like Magic the Gathering had a pre-release this weekend stuff. So I was just watching other card games because I like card games. And the Shadowverse people were like, "Do you want to learn how to play Shadowverse?" And I was like, "I don't have a deck, but sure." And then they like gave me a whole theme deck. So I don't know. I thought that was really funny. I like playing a lot of card games.
Yeah.
I like knowing all the card games.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, like I did a tiny little like couple games of Star Wars Unlimited not that long ago.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's like one of the hot new games. That and Lorcana.
Yeah, and I played Lorcana for the first
kind
set.
of the hot new game.
So yeah, it's good to learn. I think just dabbling in like lots of different card games gives you a good sense of like how they're different, how and it gives you a good sense too of like from a design perspective, card game design. Like, I see why Pokemon does this and not this, and why they can't do X, Y, or Z either. I don't know. It's interesting,
Exactly. I think it's quite cool. But you know what else is quite cool, Sean? We talked the other week about the new Worlds promo that was coming to GameStop. Not only now this week do we have the official image for it. For those of you on Spotify, I'm sorry that you still can't see it, but you can check out PokeBeach's website to see the image. But for those of you that can't see it, it is once again the Mew battling the Pikachu in the stadium that is on the coast of the beach. Very, very cool. It is also going to be available with purchase at other local and online retail locations where Pokemon TCG products are sold, like the Pokemon Center for 2 weeks while supplies last. But also, Sean, you don't have to buy anything. Well, actually, do you?
No, I mean they'll be giving out on locals.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, but I was like, usually I have to do like a $5 buy-in for the local tournament. So like, is that technically buying? So anyways, you can get it by visiting a world celebration at your Pokemon League from August 12th to the 18th. So interestingly enough, that's only like 6 days. You can find them on the event locator link on there. Is this like an actual different event? The world championship or world celebration? Is this like a whole different event? Like a challenge, local tournament cup?
No, I think it's just like a themed locals. They're just theming whatever the locals is. So it's just like, hey, go to your locals this week. We're celebrating the world championships because that 1 week window is the week leading up to Worlds, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just themed.
It'll be nice to get this promo, especially for those of you that are local regulars, right? You don't have to fight the Pokemon Center bandwidth, on their website to get one of these World Championship Pikachu promos or fight people in the GameStop parking lot. But also alongside Worlds, several cards have been announced that they're banned, Sean.
Yeah. Yeah, these for Worlds 2024 only. They're not banned like in perpetuity, just for Worlds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these cards, for clarification, are banned because they were not distributed worldwide. They're cards that are really only distributed in certain areas or like in specific languages.
Yeah.
A lot of them, they're all promos. They're all promos of some sort, right?
Yeah, they're all promos. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of them that are like, they were either like, and I will say, most of them are competitively not, they don't matter, right? Like, one of them is the Pikachu with the gray felt hat. Like, who's going to be rocking the Van Gogh Pikachu in their deck. It would be kind of funny, but like I don't think any of the people
I
who
was
made
gonna
it to
say I
Worlds.
didn't think it was that bad.
I mean, I don't know if anybody who made it to Worlds is gonna just meme on people after trying to get 600 or whatever points. But the
Hmm.
only card though, Jake, there's one card out of all of these bands that actually is potentially competitively viable. And that is the promo that comes with Shrouded Fable, the Peturant, and not the EX.
Hmm.
There's like a baby Peturant that's a Shrouded Fable promo. Um, and this Peturant, for people who don't know, it has an ability, Toxic Subjugation. And it says, as long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, put 5 more damage counters on your opponent's poisoned Pokemon during Pokemon Checkup. So people did some math, Jake, and there's a stadium, Perilous Jungle. There's
Yep.
also Radiant Sneasler, which puts an additional 2. So
Hmm.
there's a world in which you can, without even attacking, Brute Bonnet, put that charm on, put the tool onto the Brute Bonnet, play Radiant
Hmm.
Sneasler, have this in the active and the Stadium Perilous Jungle, and you will put 10 damage counters between turns on the active Pokemon. Now, I don't know
You still
exactly.
can't one shot a V.
I mean, no, you can't. You can't one shot a V. But like, there is, I think, something to be said about like, look, that's some pretty impressive damage buildup from an
Hmm.
ability on a single prizer. And like, who knows if you could pair this with other decks? I will say the one that came to my mind, Jake. You know, we were like, how do you do Revavroom EX? You know, the new Revavroom that
Oh,
discards itself.
yeah.
This ain't bad. You discard it.
It
You
also
sit this to the active. 10 damage counters plus 250. That's 350 damage, baby.
It also has Poison Chain as an attack, which I think is really interesting, which would poison your opponent's active Pokemon. But then it says during your opponent's next turn, that Pokemon can't retreat. So we don't see a ton of switch cards right now in format, and I would imagine that that might go into Worlds a little bit. That might spill into the Worlds format a little bit. So it is kind of interesting because you could trap an opponent. I mean, block Snorlax is a thing, right? That's kind
Yeah.
of the same idea. And so,
I mean, people
yeah,
played
just
Mawile, right?
yeah, the Mawile trap.
So I don't know. This is interesting. I think this is the only one that like actually mattered in terms of the ban, because
Hmm.
Japan specifically, Japan never got this card or haven't yet. They'll get it at some point. They have to. So, but weirdly, it's just it came out in English as part of Shrouded Fable first. So if you were planning to go
And
to Worlds and this is your information source as a player, now you know.
I think that the Oddish, right? The Oddish from the little short anime that they made has also been banned. I don't think that should be banned. I think they should reverse it because why would you, if you've watched it, right? That card has to win. It's got to win, and they're not giving it a chance. Totally unfair.
But yeah, those are just a couple of updates there about some Worlds,
Hmm.
both promos and banned cards. Just interesting to note.
Hmm.
But Jake, the next thing on our agenda today are some really cool products. We talk about products sometimes, but I think this one, I was like tempted. I was like, do we talk about this or not? But because it's a Pokemon Center product and not just, an ultra premium or, one of the other brands,
Hmm.
I really wanted to mention this because I think that this takes a pretty huge step forward in terms of what we typically see from the Pokemon Center in terms of these products, this style of product, right? And that
Hmm.
is particularly the deck boxes. Jake, what are we looking at in terms of the deck boxes that Pokemon Center is going to be getting in the near future?
So the easiest way that I can explain this is for anyone, especially our audio listeners. That's why I'm going to try to explain it in this way. If anybody knows Dueling Guard, Sean, have you ever heard of like Dueling Guard or
Yep.
Mana Moon? Yeah, so it's very similar to those kinds of deck boxes that are provided. They're deck boxes that either hold double decks. They're deck boxes that have like little trays for dice. or things like that, or containers. But they're in. I actually have one right here because I have a sponsorship with Dueling Guard. They're like magnetic in a
Yep.
sense, and then you open it up, and the flap that's kind of like the lid for the container has like a design on it of some sort, and like it's all magnetic, so like you can take, I don't want to drop all of this, but you can take like this whole thing apart, and you can just have the flap, you can just have the little boxes right there. But it's, once again, like, it's in that style of like what it looks like in terms of the deck boxes, and they have a couple different designs of deck boxes as well. I see they have, a premium double deck box, and then a like single deck box right here. They've also got a playmat box.
Yeah.
Interesting. So like this whole line that they've produced, by the way, has binders, sleeves, playmat, and it feels very similar to the direction as like those other companies like Dueling Guard and stuff have gone, and I really like that Pokemon has done this.
Yeah, it's a much more premium product design. So,
I
if
agree.
you've seen a lot of Pokemon Center deck boxes in the past, they tend to be the like plasticky, like a little malleable plasticky ones that have like a Velcro attachment, which are fine. They're
Mhm.
relatively inexpensive. Those are usually like 10, $15, pretty cheap. But they are not always the most durable. They don't feel particularly premium, even if they have a cool design on them. But these, what I like about these is not only are they a deck box that has like that flap that covers it over, it's like a hard case, but it also has a separate compartment for dice and tokens, right? So if
Mhm.
you need your V Star marker, you need your damage dice. And like Jake was saying, there's a single deck version and a dual deck version. So it, I really love this. I think the designs both on the outside and the inside are super nice looking, very clean. The way that they've like, it's like an embossed Charizard on the outside,
Mhm.
and then like some sort of a very cool silhouetted style Charizard on the inside cover. Um, yeah, I'm a big fan. And if you scroll down, Jake, you'll actually see too. There's backpacks and other bags as well that can hold, ETBs or deck boxes or whatever you want really, but with
Mhm.
dividers. So I wanted to point this out because I think this is a really cool set of products that are really geared towards particularly players. Like, yes, you can have you know a binder and that can be for anybody, but most of the products in here are very player centric, and they seem really well designed.
I really want to shout out the backpack too, because like, thinking about my backpack, I don't know what your backpack looks like for cards, but it is a giant hole, right? It's a black hole. Yeah, everything just gets shoved in there, yada yada yada. But this one, I mean, there are compartments that are like you said, like interchangeable. Like in the picture you see when it's empty, there's just a bunch of squares, right? Deck boxes, ETBs, like you said. But then you look at the one where it's filled, and some of those squares have been taken out in a sense. Like it's all like Velcro dividers, and so you just take out the Velcro dividers and you put your whole playmat in there. So it's like, I love this idea. I would love to get one of these, regardless if it's Pokemon, One Piece that I'm playing. Like I need a backpack like this, so then I can freaking find my deck box at the beginning of the round when I'm searching through the black hole. You know?
Yeah, and the nice thing too is they showed this off, and if you remove like a couple of the dividers, then there's like a playmat rolls up and fits on the side, and
Yeah, it's crazy.
yeah, I just wanted to point this out. Like we're not always out here shilling individual Pokemon Center products, but I think this line of products here is particularly well made, particularly
Hmm.
well conceived, and I just hope that they continue down this path. I mean, like, look, a lot of people like Charizard, cool Pokemon, but I would like to see an evolution line of
I
these
am I
legendary
am
Pokemon.
sure I am sure that more Pokemon are going to be on the way, especially if this sells well. They will
Yes.
not just only do Charizard. Charizard is just the safe Pokemon.
Yeah, it's this. Yeah, everyone likes Charizard, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is like the most popular Pokemon, right? From the popularity poll not too long
Yeah.
ago in the last year or so, or a couple of years. It's actually been a couple of years, I think, since that popularity poll. Um, but it's still, I mean, it's a Pokemon that sells and it's a Pokemon that a lot of people like. So they're going to do it first. That's fine. It's either that or Pikachu.
But speaking of new products, Jake, we also have news about a couple of upcoming sets.
Mm-hmm.
The first of which, if you for whatever reason are already bored thinking about Shrouded Fable, and are already bored thinking about Stellar Crown,
Mm-hmm.
then good news, you can start thinking about the November set instead, which has just been like revealed. The name of the set. The name
Mm-hmm.
of the set is Surging Sparks, and the release date will be November 8th. Which I'm pretty sure lines up perfectly with a 2-week window before LAIC. Pretty
Mm-hmm.
standard now for new sets to come out 2 weeks before an international championship. So, yeah, if you, for whatever reason, are already bored of the next 2 sets, there you go. Surging Sparks.
Surging Sparks going to feature Terra Pikachu EX. The Japanese set, Supercharged Breaker, is going to release in Japan on October 18th. So we're going to see like all those cards and stuff like that well before the release. And our set should also be based on Paradise Dragona, which releases on September 13th in Japan. So that one it's going to be a Dragon Pokemon set. Latios, Alolan Executor. We should see some reveals on it coming up soon. Um, I I was reminded the other day. So like I watched Azul's like run in a tournament where he was playing whatchamacallit. What's that Pokemon? Regidrago V Star. And it was so interesting to watch the deck and watch it do well now that it has the different dragon Pokemon like Raging Bolt, uh not Dragonite, Dragapult.
Dragapult.
Too
Yeah.
many
The new
dragon Pokemon
Kyurem
that's
that's
named
coming
start with
out
D.
in Shrouded
Yeah,
Fable.
the new Kyurem, right? Like to see all of those cards and then hear about how there's going to be more dragon Pokemon coming, like a whole dragon set. Is like, whoa, does this deck really need more dragon options?
I will say, I remember when Regidrago came out, when we first talked about
Hmm.
it. I think we discussed the fact that, like, look, at the time, Regidrago was just not good when it came out because there just weren't enough dragon Pokemon. They'd taken 2 years off of dragon Pokemon. You
There's just
know,
like Giratina V Star.
right? And I'm like, well, why do I really want to copy Giratina and or Hisui and Gudra? Except I'll
Hmm.
play a different Pokemon that's more complicated to get to those attacks. But at the time, we theorized, like, look, the reality is these types of attackers that can copy things from the discard, Pokemon, they've been down this road before. We had Mewtwo and Mew EX. Before that, I think there was like a Mew that also could
Yeah,
copy.
there was a Mew.
So, like,
I think there was a Mew that copied from the Lost Zone actually
oh my
at one
gosh.
point.
So, like, we've had these effects before, and Pokemon has learned that if you're gonna print a card that does that, you need to make sure that the support that it is given within the smallest window of time for it to be good. Otherwise, it is just
Hmm.
too dominant. And that's exactly what they've done. Regidrago is likely going to rotate with the next rotation, which will be sometime early next year. But they're going to get about 6 months of this deck just being absolutely broken. And I think, that's great. I'm glad. I'm glad that the deck is finally playable because it has that potential.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cool deck. I think it's interesting. I mean, I don't think we really expected something like Ogerpon EX to when we were like,
pair with it,
well, if
no.
they just release more dragon Pokemon, like the deck could be better. And then all of a sudden we get the energy accelerator draw Pokemon in there pairing up. That just so happens to accelerate the same kind of energy that Dragapult needs. But
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's a good little combination. I don't know if you're right. I don't know if the designers intended that specific little combo, but it works.
Hmm.
But yeah, so
It'll be interesting. We'll get more information on these sets soon.
Yep. But the next set of sets, if you will, that's coming next year to Japan, we did get some news, Jake, about a set called Battle Partners.
Yeah, I
Um,
heard about this.
yeah, so this is pretty interesting. We don't necessarily know all the details. Like the fact that it's called Battle Partners implies maybe something.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be, collection file N, collection file Lily. So it seems like there's a heavy emphasis on the trainers from the various, generations here.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a starter set EX, Marnie's Morpeko and Grimmsnarl EX, as well as Stevens, Beldam, and Metagross EX. A lot of speculation, though, Jake. I want to know what do you think all of this means?
I think it's going to be similar to what kind of everyone's talking about when they talk about like Team Rocket, right? The Team Rocket sets in the past, Gym Heroes, right, of the old days. I think it's going to reference similar along those where it's, Marnie's Morpeko. The card is going to say Marnie's Morpeko. I mean, we just had a card not too long ago. I don't think a lot of people remember this. Is we had Lance's Charizard
Yeah.
V, right? Remember that promo in that box? So it doesn't surprise me. Well, I guess it does surprise me because I didn't expect us to go into this, in the turn of the new year, what I should say, because it's releasing in Japan on January 24th. For anyone who does not know, this like set battle partners, and then the pre-constructed decks are releasing on February 21st. So it's a long, long ways away. A lot of people are speculating that this means tag teams as well, because especially with the quote starter set EX, Stevens, Beldam, and a Metagross EX, right? It doesn't say Stevens Beldam EX. It doesn't say Stevens Beldam or Stevens Metagross EX. It says Stevens Beldam and Metagross EX. So people are speculating, again, speculation.
Yeah.
Name of trainer with Pokemon, but also 2 Pokemon on the card. So people are like, "Oh my god, 3 prizes again!" And so it's again like super speculation, but I think it's quite cool because I personally like the idea of the trainers. I think I've said this many times, on the Metapod podcast. I like the trainers with the Pokemon.
Yep.
So this is kind of the next, potentially the next set of it if the assumptions are correct.
Yeah, I'll quickly talk about. I don't think the tag team thing is coming back. I think the ampersand. I think the ampersand in the name is a red herring. I don't think that that's going to happen. Just straight up.
Mm-hmm.
But I think because again, think about like every year, there's usually some piece of news that gets dropped at Worlds that gives you a hint as to what's coming the next year. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, this next year is going to have a theme. Usually it follows some path. Like some years, the next year is like a whole new era, right? Like we're moving from Vs to EXs. Some years it's something in between. Like we're introducing battle styles. We're introducing, Fusion Strike Pokemon and Rapid Strike and, and then I think next year is one of those years where it's not a new era, but it's an in-betweener, right? And I think that in-betweener is going to be the return of, I'm going to say broadly, owners' Pokemon as the theme for next year, where they can print EXs. There'll still be EXs. All the EX card rules will apply. So anything that targets EXs or whatever still applies to these. But I think it'll be interesting to see if, like, look, if we get Stevens this, Stevens that. Maybe there's 3 different Stevens EXs. You could imagine them printing cards that say, go search your deck for any Stevens card. And so it doesn't, you can get any one of those 3 maybe, right? Or if
I think they had cards like that of the past during the Team Magma and Aqua era,
Yeah.
right? Where cards were either categorized as Team Aqua's Kyogre or Team Magma's Groudon, right? Team Magma's Groudon won like 2004 Worlds, I think it was,
Mm,
way back in the day. They had a Team Magma specific Pokeball that was like search your deck for a Team Magma Pokemon.
yep.
So just kind of bringing those old mechanics back, I think, are really nice if you do have that. But if they do have that, right, search your deck for, a Stevens card or whatever, I think that there would be a huge limit to the number of trainers there are, right? They're not going to do like Gym Heroes is like 8 different ones, right? Because it's the gym leader, it's the 8 gym leaders and their Pokemon. I don't think you could do those kinds of specific searches and whatnot for that, or I don't think it would be a good idea. Well, maybe sets are so big now, maybe you can do it. I don't know, but I think if they stick with the theme, right, of like battle partners in the Pokebeach article, they showcase Iono, Lily, and N. So if you have just Iono and Lily as they showcase in the Pokebeach article here, I think that's where you can get the search specific things like the Team Magma's Pokeball or Team Aqua's Pokeball, stuff like that. But I think if you have it like littered between a bajillion, it doesn't fit exactly the same. It just doesn't flow well.
I would agree that if it gets too fragmented, then it can maybe get funky. What I will say
Hmm.
though is I think this is my guess. I could be wrong, but I think that there could be a preview of this in the Shrouded Fable set. Do you remember
Really?
do you remember I think it was a Pokemon that says if your opponent has a card with Colress in its name.
Oh, I do remember reading that. Is that in Shrouded Fable or was that
Yes.
in Twilight Masquerade?
It was in Shrouded Fable. It's a card that's coming out.
Okay.
So,
Hmm.
and they printed another Colress called Colress's Tenacity. Now, I
Yeah.
understand like they don't want to print a card that's just Colress because that card existed and so it's complicated. But I do find it to be interesting that they're printing, cards now as Pokemon that reference cards that have a specific piece of a name in the discard. And so there might be a world where they're trying to like sort of test out this mechanic a little bit, see how it goes. Look, the cards have already been made at this point, but I don't know. I think that maybe is a preview of like the fact that you could see a whole set of Colress cards that come out in a year. Who knows? And it has Colress's Pokemon plus Colress's different, and a card that maybe lets you search for cards with Colress in the name. And
Hmm.
so you can search, but you can only search for these 2 supporters or these specific Pokemon, right? Maybe it's too broken, but like, I don't know, cards like that sort of force your deck to like go into a theme where it's like, I am acting out like I am playing Colress in the game. So your whole deck is designed to be kind of like Colress's team in the game. I could see, in some world designers being like, that could be really fun. So you get to cosplay effectively as N, as Lily, as Iono when you're building your deck.
Hmm.
And similarly, there is a set that still has not been announced its release date called The Glory of Team Rocket. So that
Yeah,
trademark
we
has
haven't
not been
talked about that in
revealed.
a while. Yeah.
So I think it does make sense though. If you're going to have owners, right? What's the flip side of the coin? It's not always, but it's often Team Rocket, right? So,
Hmm.
okay, you have owners and now you have Team Rocket. So you can do a set that is the owners, follow that up with a set that is Team Rocket, and have a year where you kind of go back and forth between supporting the good and the bad guys, so to speak. So I'm really excited for this. I think the special illustration rares are going to be absolutely killer.
I hope
With
so. If our assumptions right.
yeah, because imagine you remember the Cosmic Eclipse character
Yeah.
rares, just
Oh,
absolutely
I know.
beautiful. So like
Hmm.
getting something like that back in the modern era with the way that how good they're designing cards right now is just going to be a thing of beauty. So
I'm excited for it, but we got a long way to go until we
yes,
get that. But as always, we'll always give you the update when those things come out and release. We also want to have a quick discussion because some I would say news really took off over the weekend for anyone who watches OKJ Love over on YouTube. One of my good buddies, creates Pokemon card content, kind of has brought in this idea of CT scanning technology. So, Sean, do you know what CT scanning is?
I mean, yeah, it's like an imaging technology where it's like an MRI and all that kind of stuff.
hmm It's basically X-raying different things. And so they've been able, through this CT scanning technology, there's been people and companies popping up that are like, we can scan products, we can scan sealed products, right? And I think of this one company, I'm trying to remember what the company's name is.
Industrial inspection and
Um,
consulting.
Industrial Inspection and Consulting. They scanned an Evolving Skies ETB, and they determined through the imaging, and it's not like a perfect image, right? Like you don't see the card in full color, whatnot. It's really just like hollow patterns. You're able to see hollow patterns because it's different shades of like gray, and sometimes you can pick out like text based on the material that is made on the card,
It's
things
metallic.
like that.
That's the key, right? It's
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
literally a different
metallic.
material.
And so they were able to determine that the Evolving Skies ETV only had a Garbodor VMAX in it. So feels bad if you were trying to open that and get some good pulls. But um, I really think this technology, and they were able to replicate this on many different cards outside of Pokemon, right? They did it for One Piece cards. They were able to identify in a One Piece booster box an SPNL. If anybody, if that means anything to anybody in Lorcana, they were able to identify some cards, sports cards. They were able to do it pretty easily because the names are pretty pronounced in the text. And some of the card games were harder than others to identify, but I think it's really interesting. And I think I don't know. I mean, it's this can change a lot of things in terms of how the secondary market goes.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. I think what'll happen is people who want to buy packs or
hmm
boxes. Um, I don't think that for newer packs or boxes it really matters, to be honest. Like if you're paying $75 to $100 per box to scan it to see if you have the big hit in there, that actually becomes very expensive. And I
Oh
don't know
yeah,
if yeah.
we should also say that the service that this specific company provides and that they are launching, right, will charge between $65 and $75 to scan a booster pack, not a booster box, a booster pack. And then they have different, like you would get a quote for like a booster box or an ETB or whatever, and then based on
Yeah.
size and stuff like that to scan it. Because it's not cheap to use these things
No.
or get. CT scanners ranging from $100,000 to $2 million USD. So don't think I'm going to be
Yeah.
buying one anytime soon, to
Yeah,
be
I
honest.
mean, look, people can provide this service. I think that when it comes to modern product, I don't think that this is going to
hmm
be an issue just because to the point that you're making about the cost, like it's cost prohibitive to bother trying to scan, which is effectively the modern version now of weighing a pack. Um,
hmm
it's effectively cost prohibitive. So say you spend all that money and you figure out which pack has the Greninja SIR, well, you've spent 3 times as much as the Greninja is worth just to find it. It doesn't make sense. So I think the only products that it really will have a potential impact on is if you're looking to buy uh vintage product, sealed vintage
hmm
product. And look, this is Pokemon, but I imagine this could apply to any card, collectible card, series, game, whatever. Like you could baseball cards, even. So
I would agree. I mean, I think the sealed market is what this is going to be geared towards, and I think will ultimately have an effect on whether that's good or bad. I'm not 100% sure, but I think of like this was the first thing that I thought of. Like if I am a sealed collector, right, and I'm trying to get a booster box of every single set ever printed, in the Pokemon trading card game. And I don't have excessive money to spend up the wazoo, like get whatever I want whenever I want and never think about the bottom line. Um, I think it would be really interesting to have a box like a base set box
Sure.
that has been CT scanned and it's verified, because actually another thing with the CT scanning service and what this service is providing is they're providing certifications as well. So like if you scan a base set booster box, they will give a certification that says this has been scanned by CT scans, and like you can go in and you can figure out like what they found in there
It's
through
like
that like certification.
it's an untampered
It's like,
base set box. It's like that's the
yeah,
hope, right?
like it's PSA grading, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it has a code now that you can go look. So I find it really interesting. Like if I was going to buy a base set box and I bought a previously scanned base set box that knew that what's the worst hollow in base set?
I don't know.
Or quote unquote worse.
Hitmonchan?
They're all pretty good.
I don't know.
Sure, like like the Garbodor VMAX, right?
Sure.
It
Yeah.
was the best hit was a Garbodor VMAX in the box. I could get it at a discounted price
Yeah.
from what they usually go, because it is known that that box does not have any Charizards, Blastoise, Venusaurs, I think is it Chansey that's pretty good in that set too.
Yeah, if you can get a
But
PSA
anyways,
10. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so like if you can guarantee that there's no hits in that box, then they would, and it's like kind of public information in a sense. You would think that it's going to be under like at
That it
least
could
at
lower the
market
price.
value, or yeah, it could lower the price on it. So like if you're someone that kind of balls on a budget, right? I mean, if you have a seal collection, you're not opening it anyway. So it's
Yeah, it's
like,
true.
well, yeah, why not stay sealed? Um, so I think it's like really interesting in that aspect, but I think oh man, does it hurt them? I don't know. Like there's so much unknown, but I think it's too big of news like not to talk about it
I
from a collecting side, and there's so much information that's misinformation or not known information about it as well.
I think it's a really interesting point, is that I think that there's a positive aspect to it, which is there's a lot of resealed boxes, especially vintage
Mhm.
product that exists on the market. And people don't know about it. Now, sometimes people don't want to know because you paid however many thousands of dollars and it would really suck if it was fake. But
Yeah, it would suck if you opened up the booster box and it was all GI Joe cards.
right. So it's like maybe you don't want to CT scan it because you have a suspicion and you don't want to confirm it. But I do think that there's a window where vintage product needs to be now verified, especially sealed. I think your point is vintage sealed boxes to be like, no, no,
Mhm.
this is the real deal. And the purpose of this box is not necessarily to open it. The purpose of this box is like, no, no, this is meant to stay sealed. And so you will pay, maybe a premium or whatever to guarantee that it's sealed, but you know exactly what's in it. And
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're buying I made that little joke about the GI Joe cards, but that's a thing that
oh
happened
yeah,
with I think Logan
Logan
Paul.
Paul. Yeah, yeah.
Opened up a sealed first edition base set booster box or something, and it was fake. So like if you are someone like Logan Paul that had bajillions of dollars up the wazoo and you don't know what to do with it all, you could take that booster box to a CT scanning company before you buy it, because you're flying out and meeting this person in person anyways. Like all these major purchases like that have like physical IRL meetups where
Yeah.
you get the product. Um,
I,
you could take it to a CT scanner too. I mean, they take walk-ins, I think, at this specific company.
I
So you could go in and do that.
I think the part of the market it really hurts
Hmm.
is the pack level part of the market. So people do buy sealed packs to open. Like you may not open a
Hmm.
sealed box. I think some people are always going to ball out and buy a whole sealed box, and if you have scanned it and you know there's a Charizard inside, then like that's great content, right? You don't
Yeah.
even have to tell the audience that you scanned it and you know there's a Charizard. You can just pretend like, oh, what are we pulling? Oh, it's a Charizard. Wow.
Sean's thinking this on a YouTube
I
level,
mean,
the real
honestly,
content creator.
who opens sealed first edition or base set boxes anymore? It's all just content creators. Let's be frank. But I
Mhm.
think for like the average sealed fan or the average vintage fan who wants the experience of opening up vintage products, right? Because
Mhm.
it's sometimes really fun to like be like, hey, I have a little extra money. Oh my god, I remember I opened up base set or I opened up Neo Genesis or whatever, right? When I was a kid, I want to go buy a pack. I want to open it up. I think the downside with this is you could get a lot of not as trustworthy individuals, similar to the weighing problem, who open up a box, have every pack CT scan, pay for that. You know, if the packs are really worth like $400 or $500 a pack, it might be worth it to pay for the scan.
Mhm.
Get a list of all of the hits, all of the not hits. You sell the cards that don't have any hits in them. You sell all those packs. And then you keep the packs that have hits and maybe you crack them yourself and keep the good stuff. So like that's I think where you can get into weird territory is like people will I think use it for bad, and then you could also have people saying, well, I've scanned it and I can guarantee you it's got a hollow in it, so I will sell it at a markup because it is considered a heavy pack, right? Which is people also do
Mhm.
that. So it's a weird one. I think that like especially when it comes to like true vintage, weighing packs is a pretty good way to tell if something has a hollow in it. But
This
yeah, I don't
takes it
know.
to a whole new level.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, because not only do you know that there's a hollow in it, now you know exactly what the hollow is. So it's
Yeah,
like,
exactly. So like I mean it's crazy, and I don't necessarily have like a positive or negative opinion, I guess, in a sense on this overall. Like I think that this is once again like super high end, until technology advances and maybe CT scanning becomes much more common, right? Due to an advancement of technology, just like TVs were, just like computers were, stuff like that. Then I guess maybe once it starts affecting me, I will have an official opinion. But
I don't think it
um,
affects the modern market. I really don't. I
no, it won't. It
Yeah,
won't.
but
There's
it is cool.
no there's no like I think the only thing that it will like actually affect in the quote unquote modern market is the sets that people have pumped up to all heck, that are not really in print anymore in Pokemon, but they're not vintage in any sense. Like I
Like
think of like
evolutions.
Evolving Skies. Yeah,
Yeah.
and Evolutions, right, is another good one. I saw an Evolutions booster box the other day sold at a card shop for $800. XY Evolutions.
I
Used to be able to
sure.
sell those boxes for $65.
Back in
Holy
my
smokes.
day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
back when Pokemon was giving them out in prizes and players were just trying to get rid of them at the
Yeah.
venue, they'd give them away for like $65.
Yeah, when they gave us the evolutions packs at Worlds 2019 and everybody groaned and rolled their eyes.
Yeah, shame on you. You could have made a lot of money right now if you just held on to them with your sealed collection and CT scanned them to see if there was a Charizard in there or not.
But one last story here today. This is a short
Mhm.
little one to sign us off, but
This
we
is a
don't
cool one.
we don't usually talk about big tournaments in other regions. Every now and again, we might touch on, maybe something in Europe, something in Japan. But
Mhm.
Beijing, Pokemon China is relatively new, I will say. The official like play Pokemon system came to China just a year or two ago, I want to say.
Mhm.
And in the meanwhile, I'll also preface this by saying they have been catching up to our set. So they actually started at Sword and Shield just like 2 years ago and have
Yeah.
been working their way up. So, they're working with completely different decks and standard format over there. But they had a tournament called Beijing Masters at the, midpoint of July. So a couple of weeks ago. And it's the largest Masters event in Pokemon history. And I'm just surprised that I haven't heard of other people or other websites talking about this because everybody likes to talk about, biggest event in Pokemon history, right? Is this regional or
Yeah.
worlds or this international? Now the official biggest event ever. It's not Japan. It's not anywhere else in the world. It is China. It's in Beijing. There was 5,600 masters in this one
Oh,
tournament, Jake.
it says during the article specifically says during the 2-day event, more than 7,000 players from all over the country gathered in the capital.
It may, I don't know if they're
But I guess like maybe 56 like included specifically in this one portion, because it looks like they also have VGC there.
I think they
as
had other
well,
things. They
maybe?
also had seniors and juniors. So I think 7,000
Yeah,
is
so-
totality.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, somewhere else, someone reported 5,600 masters, which is like
Either
double.
way, both of those numbers really
Crazy.
high, whichever one it is. And this was an interesting one too, because it was a 2-day event,
Mhm.
right? It was a two-day event with all of those players. Holy smokes! But the Masters tournament also adopted a double deck competition format. So really interesting. It says in each round of the competition, contestants can freely choose one of 2 decks submitted before the game to compete, which greatly increases the confrontation and excitement of the flexible changes battle stage. So basically, I can go into Worlds this year if Worlds adopted this format, and I can enter in RK9 Labs both Lost Box and Reggie Drago. And then just before every round, I'm just like, what am I feeling like playing? I'm going to play Lost Box round 1. What am I playing round 2? I'm going to play Reggie Drago this round.
I will say, Jake, so they don't put it in this article, but I watched a YouTube video from somebody who I guess is living in China, maybe, commented on this event. So additionally, the double deck format, it was a best of 1 tournament on day 1. So that's important to note. So 5,600 players, they were like, we cannot do best of 3. That is not going to, that ain't going to happen. So we're going to do best of 1. But I think they had, and then the double deck format was also open deck list, Jake.
Yeah,
so you
I
knew,
did. Yeah, I remember hearing that. Yeah.
So you knew what your opponent's decks were. So before every round, your opponent knew what yours were. You know what your opponent's 2 options were. And so you get to try to play a mind game going into that best of 1 to say like, what deck should I pick? What deck do I think my opponent's going to pick? And I thought it was interesting because I think that was them trying to say, we know that best of 1 formats can sometimes be unforgiving.
Mm-hmm.
From a matchup dependency perspective. Sometimes you just get really bad pairs. You get some auto losses. And in a best of 1, you don't really have a chance to like have a good game or whatever out of it. So I think to counteract that, they did allow 2 decks and an open deck format, which I just wanted to point it out because I'm like, this is wild. I don't know if we'll ever get a format like this in the West. But as tournaments get bigger and bigger, I think this was Pokemon experimenting with like, well, what if we end up with a 5,000 person regional next year? What are we going to do? We can't do best of 3 with that many people. We just can't.
So, Sean, I also want to talk about the winner.
Yeah.
What were the 2 decks from the winner? Because I thought about this, and for anyone who's curious, it's at least, or at the latest set is Brilliant Stars back towards Sword and Shield base, probably. So that's kind of the format that you're working with. But Sean, what ended up winning?
Well, I don't know this person's actual name. This is a translated article, so I don't know if his name is Peng 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 or Pom Peng Peng, but he played a combination of Eternatus VMAX and Arceus V-Star and Malamar VMAX. So like it was Arceus and Malamar as a deck, and then the other deck was Eternatus VMAX. Which, if you haven't heard those names in a while, that tells you the format that they're playing in right now relative to ours.
Eternatus VMAX, one of Sean's least favorite decks ever in the Pokemon trading card game. For any of you Metapod historians, Sean once had a whole YouTube campaign around beating Eternatus VMAX with different decks, and it's one of my favorite little fun facts about Sean.
Yeah,
because I think it's just so funny. But RCS V Star and Malamar V Max. I could see Eternatus because I do remember, like, at least in our format, Eternatus did run wild for a little bit and was
Yeah.
considered like a top deck, but Malamar V Max, very cool, especially paired with Arceus V Star, right? Arceus being able to accelerate the energies, right, to Malamar, and then especially like in an open deck list format, Malamar VMAX being able to put cards back into the opponent's deck,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's
knowing
very
like their outs
controlly.
that they got. Yeah,
It's like
that's
a,
it.
a slow. It's like a mini control deck, right? You're not playing full control, but very
Mhm.
disruptive.
It was so cool to like see the article and see the video of the creator who was talking about it and all that stuff. Do you remember their name? So then people could maybe watch. Well, I think you
Can,
linked it to me, so I'll include it in the.
yes, we'll include it in the
I'll
show
include it in
notes.
the. Yeah, I'll include it in the show notes below for you all. But interestingly, Sean, would you like to see something like Worlds in 2025 have a 2-deck format?
No, no, I don't. I think that
No.
this double deck format, because I personally prefer closed deck lists. I think
Mm-hmm.
having the opportunity to surprise your opponent really does. It's interesting. It's competitively interesting to me. But I think that this was an interesting solution to a best of one format, because
Mm-hmm.
that is also, when you have best of one, you get a lot of games that are just feels bad, and you kind of wish like, if I knew what my opponent is playing and if I had another option, I would love to be able to have picked that option. So I think it's a really interesting approach to a large best of one format, but I do not think that it makes sense for Worlds, because Worlds next year is going to be only like 600 to 800 players, so they're not going to have
Yeah.
a capacity issue.
I will. I would love to see the. I would love to see Pokemon or tournament organizers in general have side events at regionals and stuff with a 2-deck format. I think that would be really cool. I love the idea of just bringing in 2 decks and then like just feeling it out, because it's not like Sean, you and I are facing off in round one of this Beijing Masters event, and you show me that you have Blissey EX, and I'm like, oh look, I'm just gonna pick a fighting deck to
No, you
counter
have to
that. No, I
guess.
think you both submit your picks at the same time for that round. So it's like it's definitely a guessing game. And if you notice that everybody in the room is playing Blissey EX for some reason, then you're like, I guess I'm just gonna auto choose my Groundon or whatever my uh I don't even know fighting Pokemon. There's no good fighting Pokemon, it feels like, in this format, but you get what I mean.
Yeah, it is interesting. The reason I don't like it in the in a Worlds format, and I was thinking about it right
Mm-hmm.
now, and I'm like, I think what it does is it promotes generically good decks over decks being chosen that have maybe a good match, that maybe have good matchups with the top decks. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think that control would probably not do well in this format, because your opponents would have two options. They would see that one of your options is control, and they would pick their choice that has a good matchup against control or has cards in it that counter control. Um,
Okay.
and so alternate deck formats like that, I don't think would do very well. And so the decks that end up on top are just the decks that are, no matter what my opponent picks, this is just a good deck broadly. Do you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So that's why I'm like, I don't love it in a Worlds format, but really interesting. I just wanted to point it out. I'm like, I don't hear people talk about, obviously, China Pokemon very much. And they're doing some crazy things over there.
Yeah, and the next regional that is hosted in America, they're really going to have to specify biggest American regional ever,
That's
because,
right.
well, the Beijing Masters definitely did more, because we probably won't ever hit 7,000, at least for a long time. But
No. But Jake,
and
sign us out.
that'll be it for us. Remember, if you want to leave questions for the next episode, feel free to click the link in the description below for the official Discord server. I was going to say YouTube channel. You could go there for the YouTube channel as well, but the official Discord server of the Metapod podcast and we will be talking about Shrouded Fable decks next week. Azul, also, if you didn't watch on Twitch, there was a World's Mega Camp watch party where like Tord and Calvin Connor, I think it was, and a couple other people were invited to this event in Japan that was ran, and it was a Worlds format like testing group that they streamed. And so Azul did a watch party, and I think it's on his YouTube channel as well. If you want to go watch that, highly encourage, especially if you're interested in the different decks that we're going to talk about in the next week.
Yeah, really, really cool concept. So good shout out there.
Yeah. Anyways, that's it for us. I'll stop yapping. That's me. That's Sean. Thank you so much for listening to the Meta Podcast, Pokemon podcast that revolves around the evolving meta.